going?
Do you mean today at the show, or do you mean in the world?
The big picture. Big picture.
As far as, with the latest, what you're working on, and Aaron working on God and other stuff he's working on.
Yeah. You want to go first?
Sure.
We'll do it alphabetically.
Aaron and Ron.
Well, as some of you in the audience may know,
Let's show it.
now Ron and I have actually worked in mainstream comics for, 30 years probably, right? Darn close to 30 years, and here it is, kind of ironic. Ron's been doing it longer than I have in terms of doing his own thing, but it's kind of funny that we can finally get, I'm not going to say the end of our career, but latter half of our career and decide to do independent publishing. And I'll tell you, the interesting thing is that what I first realized, which I didn't think would happen, was you get into such a geek mindset your entire career that, I want to draw Spider-Man, I want to draw the FF, I want to do this, I want to do that. Then after you've been doing it for 20, 25, 30 years, suddenly it's just a paycheck, and you don't care if you're drawing Metamorpho or if you're drawing Superman event, except for maybe the royalty check. And when I stepped away and started publishing my own stuff, I wouldn't say I had an epiphany, but I would say that I had this realization that I was like, wow, I've spent my entire life drawing something or writing something for somebody else that they own, and they don't give a rip if it's me, if it's Ron, or whoever is the next person drawing Batman or Superman or whatever, and you realize that you have no investment in that other than the paycheck that you've been drawing for 20 to 30 years, which is nice that you're able to pay your bills, but in terms of creative freedom and enjoyment, fulfillment, thank you, there's the word, and I've never experienced anything like this. We were just talking back there about how much work it is, because we have to do everything. You're not just the writer and the artist, you're the editor, you're the publisher, and you have to deal with the promotion and all these types of things that draw you away from, or pull you away from the drawing table. But when you're working on your own project and it's all your stuff, it doesn't seem, the work doesn't seem to be so oppressive as it is when you're in a monthly grind doing a comic for Marvel or DC. So there's been this sort of, which I didn't really expect, this sort of extra level of satisfaction that I'm getting from working on my own stuff that I wasn't necessarily getting when I was working in the mainstream.
Yeah, I'd say similar. The shorthand I use for it is it's the difference. It only works if someone's a parent, but I say it's like the difference between raising your own child versus babysitting somebody else's kid. You're more for your own child. You will do insane things without even giving it a second thought, and it doesn't feel like it's a sacrifice. It just you do it without thinking. Of course I'm going to do this for my child. It doesn't make any rational sense, but you do it, and it's kind of like that when you've created something that you're really invested in. It's like they say, anything the more effort you put into something, the more juice you get out of it, so to speak. And when I started doing Trekker, there was a moment of terror because I said, I cannot point to anybody else in this collaborative team and say it's their fault. If the story sucks, that's my story. You know what I mean? So you're really all in and fully committed. So that is great, but it's also kind of like a drug because it takes its toll on you too. It is so much work.
We should have those before picture and after pictures. They said like before heroin, after heroin. The president when he's young at 80, and then after 8 years.
Exactly. But so let's see what else.
The interesting thing, are you done with your train of thought? Okay. There really wasn't until the advent of Kickstarter and Indiegogo and some of these platforms. This really wasn't possible like it is now, because, and Ron can attest to this, having done Trekker through Dark Horse, and you've got to find a publisher, number one, that's interested in your project, that thinks maybe they can turn a buck on it, right, to get interested in it. And then you got to pray that you get sales numbers that are significant, that you can actually get some money for all the effort you put into the book. And the way that, if you guys don't know, the way that the industry works through comic shops and stuff like that, you're giving up 60% of your cover price to the distributor and the comic shop. So you're returning 40%. Like if your comic's $1, you're getting 40 cents back per issue sold. So you can imagine if you only sell 5,000 copies, you're gonna go broke. And that's one of the big challenges and why I didn't do anything, 20 years ago, because my properties I'm doing right now, Wraith of God, Garbage Man, some of the other stuff that's coming up, some of those things are, I came up with Wraith of God when we were in Studiosaurus in the 90s. It was originally a ghostwriter pitch for Marvel, and they were like, man, we don't want to do that. And I thought, well, this is pretty good, I'm going to keep it and rework it. But I had nothing, there was no way for me to publish it, even if I did it through Image, which we tried to do that. And the first sales in the book were enough to say, hey, I made $3,000 on this. And then the sales in the second issue were so low, it's like, now I owe Image money. So this isn't any good. So what this crowdfunding has allowed us to do is that we can operate, since we're direct to the seller, we're able to make a profit or a living on a considerably lower number of sales than we would be if we were selling through the direct market. And so I'm sitting on 30 years of stuff that I've created and always wanted to do, but never really had a viable outlet. If you could get Marvel or DC talked into your character, generally, they took it from you, right? And so you might get to do it, but you're not going to really get the benefit of, being able to merchandise your stuff and any profit you might make from that. I'm still on the very low end of the profit margin on my that stuff, but all that stuff goes to, Marvel or DC. And so this allows you, through crowdfunding now, it allows you to sort of raise the money you need to do the project and actually make it a viable option with a limited audience, as opposed to hoping, oh my gosh, I got to sell 20,000 of these, or I don't even have a paycheck. So that's one of the things that's really changed the landscape of independent publishing, where you're not chasing the numbers that you used to have to do that to even make it, a break-even proposition and quit your day job.
So you asked, so how is it going right now? And that makes me, so what Aaron's talking about, the difference is if you're doing a book through a...
Do you want to use the mic now? We're getting a little bit into the back there.
Yeah, there's a little background noise too. So if you're doing your comic through a traditional publishing house, right? So there's the publisher, and they take care of the marketing, and they work with the printers and distributors and do all that sort of stuff. But then your book has to bring enough money that pays for some of that overhead. With crowdfunding, you can say what you're doing is you're eliminating the middleman, which is the publisher, but you're not really eliminating the middleman. You're becoming the middleman.
Yeah, exactly.
So now, instead of my job being to write and draw my comics, my job is to write and draw my comics and build the marketing campaign for it and run the Kickstarter for it and deal with the printers. All those tasks you're all taking on board. So there's no free ride. You're gonna have to have the publisher. You're gonna have to give some of your profits to the publisher, but you've got to take on all that work for yourself. So that's how it's going. It's a lot of work. You're busy all the time, it seems like. Still, I prefer to be in this boat, where I'm doing my book on my terms, because, like Aaron, I guess, I'm sure, I'm grateful that I've got enough backers that I'm sort of able to keep my head afloat through it, all that effort that I spend being on social media, building Kickstarter campaigns, and that sort of stuff, that's effort I'd rather spend doing that in the service of my book than I'd want to spend courting editors or publishers and trying to get an assignment out of them, or the extra energy it takes to draw an assignment that I don't want to draw but I need to make a paycheck. Because I've been there plenty of times. I've taken on plenty of jobs. I'm a done for hire. When you're lucky, you're done for hire on a project that you really enjoy. that does not happen most of the time. So with this, like with Trekker or with Wraith of God or Garbage Man, I'm sure I speak for you too. These are projects that there's no outside agenda for them. I'm not there to generate a property that can be on a lunch pail or something. I'm doing something that's a story that's inside of me that appeals to the 8-year-old kid in me and says, I want to do this, you know. Obviously, there's decades of training and craft and hopefully artistry on top of that, so it comes out as more than just a self-indulgent, you know, empty, you know, piece of crap. but it starts from that. It doesn't start. I mean, I've drawn issues for DC where I say honestly, I have no idea what the reason is that this story exists, other than DC needs to put out 22 pages of this month because that's what the accountants tell them that they need to do. And that's probably a cynical way to put it. Sometimes DC and Marvel do make really good comics. Like sometimes Hollywood puts out a really great movie. It's kind of a miracle, but it can happen. So when I'm working on Trekker, it may not be brilliant. I mean, sometimes I think it's pretty damn good. But it's me. It's warts and all. But it's a very personal connection. And when I meet a reader, and they say that they really like my character, or used to say Claire or something like that, that means so much more to me than when they say, oh, I really like that one issue you drew that had Green Lantern in it or something. That's nice to hear, you know. But when they like Trekker, that's almost like saying they acknowledge my existence and worth as a human being. It's like, that's a secret handshake. So that's how it's going. It's exhausting and it's full of juice, and I've never been happier and more busy in my life.